This is Mickey Oshioka, who grew up on the west side with me. We both worked for Mondello's, and then, believe it or not, we both worked for Donovan. Well, I was still with Mondello's while he was here at Donovan's, and Bob Kreitz, one of the funniest guys and one of the hardest drag racers out there, asked Mickey-O a question one day, and I think it had to do something with, would you like to get your picture on the front of Drag News or a magazine?
Some magazine, I'm not real sure which one it was.
So he came up with an idea. Why don't you tell us what it was?
He says you can make some good sparks with some DevCon in the exhaust. So that's what it was,
so
just a
that's what this
DevCon.
picture is about, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so explain the picture so I understand what happened.
Well, this was just a burnout at Orange County.
Right.
And it was the first pass. I think I was the last few older to qualify, so they put me up against Bob Noyce.
Uh-huh.
And he was driving the top fuel cover. It scared him so bad he shut off.
Okay, yeah, I bet it would.
Yeah. So that's as far as that picture goes.
Wow.
But that's one of the, this is, Bob Kreitz was known for this kind of antics, of thinking something like this up.
Right.
And so this is classic Kreitz around the shop here, thinking up with some of the pranks and everything he pulled.
Besides that, arguing against Van Leuven all the time. Oh, I used to get tired of that argument every day.
And then, about that time, then, Ed would join in with both of them. Right. And they'd get going, and some of the stuff was just so hysterical because Van was the master. And he'd just keep going on you till you, and he'd just laugh. He thought it was so funny. He'd get people just worked up and stuff.
Yeah.
But
Ed used to turn all red and just, you can always tell when he got pissed off because he started doing this.
It was some of the, I remember one time, this was my favorite Donovan story, was we were standing and he came walking in, he walked up to Van Leuven and says, count them, 4. Right now, there's 4 417s qualified at the U.S. Nationals. And Van, wanting to get his goat, said, taking a 417 to the U.S. Nationals is like taking a Clydesdale to the Kentucky Derby. And at that point, they both started. And it was just this play back and forth between the two of them, and I'm sure within a matter of seconds, Ed had a comeback for it. So it was just this was just some really great guys to work and be around.
And it must have been nice to work for him for the time you did, right? Were you working here in the shop?
Yeah, but he always made me work Saturday mornings.
And you'll never forget that, right?
Cylinder heads. Never caught up with the cylinder head stuff.
Very good. Thank you for those stories.
Okay. was over on Regent Street in Inglewood
Right.
when we first went around his shop.
Right.
And he made really good stuff, but it cost real money.
Right.
He didn't have real money.
Right.
And so we'd go over there and drool and look at all the stuff and talk to him about it. And so we were building our dragster, and we wanted to have all the right stuff, and he made the right stuff.
Right.
So we needed a clutch can, a bell housing scatter shield thing.
Right.
And at the time, aluminum ones had been permitted, and so he was still welding them up. They were rolled up,
Right.
pieced together like
Right.
you see in the modern capital cars.
Right.
So we couldn't come up with the money, so we said, well, we'll just build our own. So we got some metal and we rolled it up and we took it to an aircraft welder and we did sort of the homemade version of it.
Yeah,
and
you
it came
did.
out exactly like a Donovan, right?
Wow.
And so that was in our car and blah, blah, blah. And then one day the mole showed up at the drag strip and he walks up and he's got a Donovan sticker, the sticker that was on the real store-bought Donovan can.
Right.
He gives us the sticker and we put it on. So now it's real, even though we made it ourselves.
That's a great story,
And another one was he started making these exhaust rockers, forged exhaust rockers.
Right.
And of course, again, we couldn't afford them. So we would take the stock cast rockers,
Right.
Chrysler rockers, and we'd polish them and shot peen them and do whatever we could do to them, right? Thinking we couldn't afford Donovan rockers, right?
Right.
Well, we really could afford them because whenever it would break an exhaust rocker, the exhaust valve wouldn't open. So when the intake tried to open, the fire would go back in the manifold and put your blower into low Earth orbit.
Right.
And all of a sudden, what we couldn't afford, we somehow were able to afford because we had to buy, new blowers and
Right.
stuff, right?
Yeah.
And anyway, eventually, we stepped up and actually bought the Donovan rockers, even though we actually probably paid for them about 3 times by not being able to afford them, right?
Yeah, right. But you and Ed got along.
Oh, we got along great, yeah.
Yeah.
And Ed was weird. He wouldn't, let's say you needed a part. He wouldn't give you a deal on the part, but you'd come down to see him and talk it over with and discuss it. And then he'd say, well, let's go get something to eat. And you go down, there was a restaurant right down here called the Palms. It was like a dinner place, kind of dimly lit, real nice steakhouse kind of place.
Right.
Called the Palms. He loved going to the Palms. Or he really enjoyed good food, right? Good
Right.
anything.
Right.
So we go to the Palms, and you'd have a dinner, and you could not pay. It was impossible. You could
That's
not
what
pay.
we've heard, yes.
Impossible. Okay, so now you came to buy some parts, right? And now he's bought dinner, and let's say that he spent, back in the day, it was $60, which was a lot of money.
Sure. Yeah, right.
And so you come back and you buy the part, and it's essentially free because he's bought you dinner. This is super deluxe dinner, right?
Right.
And everybody in the world will tell you that story.
Sure, right.
About he wouldn't give you a deal, but he'd buy you dinner.
Yeah.
And he'd buy you dinner all week. I mean,
Wow.
it didn't matter.
Yeah,
But you had to be on his good list to get invited to dinner. Kind of,
right.
great.
He was absolutely great as far as a person's concerned if you were on his side. But if you weren't on his side, he was a little tough, a little
Yeah.
hard to get along with.
Sure.
But, I mean, that's basically the guy himself. And there was no finer machinist probably ever than Ed Donovan. And, boy, let me tell you, you had to do it right or you didn't do it at all with him.
Got it.
An absolutely perfect guy.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. And and you first met him when? Remember when?
Oh, wow. 1966, I want to say. I don't know. I can't remember that far back. I don't remember what I had for dinner today.
You came back. You came here to the West Coast when? You came
1964,
back 64,
65.
65. Okay. So yeah, and then And what did you get from Ed? Did you get things from him? Did
Yeah.
he provide you with stuff? How did he help?
Yeah, I did. The first thing I think I bought from Ed Donovan was some of his rocker arm. No, that wasn't right either. What was it I bought? Can't remember. I'll have to go back on that.
That's
But
all right.
It might have been some of his rocker arms or whatever.
Okay, all right, okay.
And he was the rocker arm king as far as the 392 Chryslers were going.
Right, okay. Anything else you can think of offhand about him? I mean,
And he was just as a friend, he was a great friend because you were on his side. When you're on his side, he did everything in the world for you. And the only real thing I can tell you about Ed Donovan with me is because of him, I got to stay in drag racing. Without him, I would never have been able to stay in drag racing.
really, what did he do to help you? What difference did he make for you?
Well,
It held you
the
in.
difference that he made was he had the finest stuff there was, and we did good by him. He did good by us. So there was nothing the guy wouldn't do for you. If you were an out of towner or a Chevrolet guy, you didn't get to do. He wouldn't do nothing for you. What can I say?
Right.
You know,
So he did help you stay in drag racing, or
without him and Woody Gilmore, I wouldn't have got to stay in drag racing because them are the two guys that kept me going and kept me alive.
beautiful. Okay, thank you very much.
You got it.